guys, May here, and today I am filming a video that has been requested by no one, but I've been bugging myself to film this for so long. An updated advice for starting your K-pop collection video. This is, to this day, one of my most popular videos, starting your K-pop collection advice video. So I will link that video down below because I have watched it recently, and even though it is a couple of years old, I feel like a lot of that stuff is very relevant, but I also feel like in 2017 a lot of things have changed, and I feel like that I need to expand on that video and add on a little bit of what I think has changed and what I think is important to note when you start collecting in 2017. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get started. One of the first things that I think you should think about when buying K-pop in 2017 is what store you're going to use, and this was also relevant in 2000. Did I make this in 2014, 2015? 2015. You should have done your research on stores in 2015, but I feel like these days there's like 3,000 more stores than there were in 2015, and there's so many different like options and so many different places where you can go and buy things from, that just being like, well, this person uses this store, so maybe I'll do this store. It's probably not the best way to go. I will forever recommend Kpop CD if you live in the United States. They have been my favorite store that I have ever used. But a couple of years ago, I did not use them. I used a different, or I was starting to use them, and so definitely do research on your stores. There are stores that have a lot of different specials. There are stores that have annual sales. There are stores that have biannual sales. There are stores that will give you free posters for pre-order. There are stores that you have to request the poster and pay an extra shipping fee. There are different shipping methods on different stores. So it sounds overwhelming. Do your research. Look around and see where your favorite K-pop YouTubers or K-pop collectors buy their stores. Ask them questions about their stores. If you ever have any questions about Kpop CD, do ask me about them, because I have been using them for so long now that I feel like I know everything about their store at this point. I could be a staff member. You just need to kind of try out a couple different stores and see which one works the best for your area of the world, and also the speed and the kind of shipping that you want. I will forever recommend that you should have a tracking number on your package when you are buying from any store, because then you have a way to kind of find it and it doesn't just vanish between the store and your house. The second point that I had that I didn't really mention in that first video was to not go crazy and to focus on your favorites. I think that there are so many groups in K-pop these days. Like the past few years have really, we've seen a ton of debuts and a ton of new groups and a ton of subunits and solo debuts, and there are so many releases all the time now. I feel like we're getting into an era of K-pop where there's just going to always be so many releases. Like there's not going to be a time that's like very quiet. Like maybe just the second half of December will continue to be quiet this year, but I wouldn't even count on that, to be honest, because that's when everybody thinks, oh, nobody's going to be promoting, we should promote then, so we'll win a music show award. Like, it's going to be super busy. So what I've been doing recently is I will wait. If I like a comeback from a group, I will wait until the second comeback after, or the next comeback after that, to decide, oh, do I want to buy this group's albums? Companies that I don't do that for are Willem, Pledis, Jellyfish, because those companies I am a stan of, and I really like every group and artist in that company, so I kind of know what to expect from each group in a company. But I don't think that you should go out and buy everybody's new album. I mean, you can if you want to. All of this is like, you can do whatever you want. This is just what I'm recommending, as been collecting for 7-8 years. Focus on your faves, but don't be afraid to experiment, is what I'm going to say. So if you get into K-pop and you decide that your favorite group is MONSTA X, let's just say that. Say your favorite group is MONSTA X. They have a pretty decent amount of releases out. They've been around for 2 years, and they have a couple Japanese singles. They have a full-length album, a Repack. Still, buy their most recent release and then go back and collect their stuff. But I wouldn't say collect all of MONSTA X's albums, all of 17's albums, all of BAP's albums. Like, don't do that to yourself. If you want to buy those three groups, if you say I want to collect BAP, 17, and MONSTA X, buy all of their recent releases, because they're all pretty active groups. If you feel like you need all of the versions, it's another thing. You can get all of the versions, but kind of decide what you want collection-wise for all versions. The reason I collect all versions for like groups like 17 that release a lot of versions of their albums is just because, one, I am a Pledis stan and I just really enjoy having every version of things that come out of Pledis Entertainment. It's how I've always been. I collect all of Pristine's albums, all of 17's albums, all of New East's albums, all of After School's albums, etc, etc. But there are some groups like GOT7, nothing against GOT7, but I just feel like I don't need every single version of everything they release, and I know that they are very into 2 versions and member versions and all this stuff. So I don't feel a need to buy every single thing. If you look at 17's newest release, their second full-length album, one, there's a 99% chance that album's gonna have a repack. Depending on when you see this video, it might have already had a repack. Planning on just buying the repack if you just want the music, maybe you should wait for the repack. But I wouldn't say go back and try to buy all of their previous albums while you're waiting for the repack, unless you're like some billionaire, which in that case, give me some money too, because I am poor. I wouldn't say go crazy. You look on the internet and you see people like myself who have 400, 500 albums. That did not happen overnight. That happened over 8 years. Like, you know, I've earned a lot of money in 8 years and I did not spend it all on K-pop. I spend a fairly small amount of my income on K-pop, actually. Don't buy every single album that comes out. If there's 6 comebacks in a week, you don't need all 6 of those comeback albums. But again, don't be afraid to experiment. If you've liked a couple of comebacks from a group, go ahead and buy their album. Like, I would say go ahead and buy those albums at least. But if you're going to buy those albums, you should listen to the full album. It's so easy these days to look up the album on YouTube, like within half an hour after it's been released, and the entire album is right there for you to listen to. Because you're not just buying the title track. I think a lot of people buy an album for the title track, and that like drives me crazy because I am a big fan of B-sides. Like, I think B-sides can make or break an album, and if you have the best title track in the entire world but your B-sides are awful, I don't want your album, because I'm not just buying your title track, I'm buying the like 5 or 6, because usually they're mini albums, other songs that are also on your album. Next thing I want to say is you don't need every single Japanese thing. Debuting in Japan has become very, very popular over, I'd say, the past like 4 years, because the Japanese music market is very large and there's a lot of money in the Japanese music. But there are some groups that will only release the same songs in Japan that they release in Korea. And to me, I don't need that. Like, I need it for my ultimate groups, so Super Junior, Infinite, and MONSTA X, and I do buy a Pink's things, but they don't release their Korean titles in Japan anymore. They release original Japanese music, which is what I like. For groups like A Pink that always have 9 versions of their album, because we have the normal edition, we have version A and version B, and then 6 CD plates, I just buy Balmy and Unji CD plates, and I'm considering just bumping it down to Balmy's CD plate only, because they just release Japanese singles so fast. But there are also some people I know who, and some groups like Cross Jean, I buy their full-length Japanese albums and I'm perfectly happy with that. And I have a couple of like little fun things here and there and that I just really wanted, and then I had the money for it, so I bought them. But you don't need every single Japanese thing, especially if that group's not your ultimate group. I would not recommend buying Japanese things from groups that aren't your ultimates, because you're going to run out of money very fast and you're going to be like, why do I have all of these jewel cases of songs that I already had on this Korean album in Japanese? Use your resources. This is a very important tip. It's also kind of vague, I just realized, but YouTube is a great resource. If you are looking at an album and you say, I don't know which version I want, guaranteed that somebody has uploaded a unboxing onto YouTube, and you can just like scroll through and say, well, I like the photo book in this version more, or the photo book's exactly the same in both of these versions, or there's like 2 photos different in this photo book from this photo book. Use your resources before you buy an album if you're just getting into collecting, because if you just blindly buy an album, also if you're buying an album with a CD plate and you are afraid of trading CD plates, you can go on eBay and you can buy, most of the time, like 99% of the time, you can find an album that has your bias's CD plate in it if that's something you're really, really looking to do. Other resources are people who unbox albums and have lots of albums. You can ask them questions about albums. Like, I have friends who will message me and they'll be like, hey, I'm thinking about buying this album and I saw you like unboxed it recently. Which version do you recommend? Yeah, like I get questions like that from friends literally all the time. Or like, hey, do you know how many blah blah blah? Like some of these things you can Google, so I wouldn't recommend bombarding your favorite K-pop YouTuber with like how many photo cards come in this album, because you can look that up yourself, like you really can. But there are some things that are like, which version would you recommend? Which concept do you think is better? Which packaging do you think is better? Do you think that there's going to be a repack? Should I waste my time and money on this original album? For the most part, I'm not a fan of just buying the repack for groups. Usually I like to have the original album and the repack. There are a couple groups I only buy repacks from, but very few. So using your resources, I think, is super important. And then like I mentioned earlier, do you really need both versions of 17's newest album? Do you really need all 4 versions? Maybe you do. I feel like I do. Am I gonna buy them all at the same time? No, but do I feel like I should have all 4 versions eventually? Yeah. Also, if you use Amazon proxy sites, those are 2 great ways to buy albums and save money, especially older albums. If you're looking for like albums that are seemingly very rare, sometimes you can find a great deal on proxy sites and Amazon. Like I said, you just need to research before you just go ahead and blindly buy. When you have as many albums as I do and you're saving money at the same time, it's so good to know that you have options. And I really just like trying out different stores every once in a while. And there are some stores I know that I will use for some things and some stores I know I will not use for some things. Like for regularly buying albums, I will use Kpop CD, but if I want to pre-order my Ultimate group's album, because I pre-order Ultimates, I don't pre-order anybody else, but Ultimates I pre-order. And I'll use different sites because Kpop CD doesn't use pre-orders. And if you're interested in signed albums, M-Wave is a great place for that. There are some stores like K-Pop Town that also do that, like signed albums, but they're through M-Wave usually. But you know, just if you want to save yourself a step, your album a step. So those are just some things I have thought of recently that I think it's really important to know if you're just getting into collecting K-pop albums, especially in this day and age where it seems like there's 500 versions of everything, and there are very few groups these days that release just one version, and those groups that just release one version of their album still, I love them. I love them so much. It's just like so easy. And then you have groups that you know you can expect 2 versions from, and I feel like that's fine too. Like I've never really been too upset about 2 versions. If I'm buying both versions, I feel like that group deserves my money for both versions. Like that's just kind of the way I've always been, but you may not think that. I know some people think that having more than one version is a waste of money, and you can think whatever you want and I will think whatever I want. But if you are just getting into collecting albums, or if you've been collecting for a while, go ahead and leave your advice or any questions you might have about collecting albums down in the comments section down below, and we can definitely chat about these things down there, because it's so overwhelming, I feel like, to get into K-pop these days. Like when I got into K-pop in 2009, there was like 12 groups. Or it feels like there was like 12 groups. Like everybody knew all the groups and it was like cool. Everybody was like, oh yeah, that group has one comeback a year and that's cool, like that's a thing. And now it's like you go 2 months and everybody's like, where's this group? I haven't seen them in 20 years. Like MONSTA literally just released Newton and Shine Forever recently, and they've been doing covers and things, but I feel like it's been forever since they've had a comeback. Like that's why I can stay into K-pop, because I have changed with K-pop, like the way that I think about it. Let me know if you have any other questions, or if you have been collecting for a while and have some advice that you think also might be helpful for new fans of collecting albums, down in the comment section down below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!